Welcome everybody to the G100 PwC Future of the Profession webinar for 2021. My name is Janelle Hopkins and I'm the Chair of the Group of 100 and the CFO of REA Group. At the G100, we have three key priorities. One, creating a vibrant CFO and finance network. The second one's about shaping business outcomes. And the third one is about fostering the CFOs of tomorrow. One of the ways we deliver that is through a number of our different working groups. We have working groups around external reporting, tax, but a really exciting one is about the future of the profession. And we're very lucky that Sam Lobley from PwC has taken a leading role on that working group, working with the G100. And we have a goal over the year for a number of series to be run between PwC and the G100 around the future of the finance profession. And the topic of today is around finance transformation. And I'm sure it's a topic that we keep talking about every year because it's an ongoing evolution and change. I know at REA, one of the challenges we face is there's always more to do with less. So for me, it's about how we work smarter, not harder. So thinking about finance transformation is something that's regularly on my mind. So I'm looking forward to the conversation we're going to have today. Before I introduce Sam, I'd just like to do the acknowledgement of country. So we would like to acknowledge and pay our respects to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first peoples of Australia, whose ancestral lands and waters we work and live on throughout Australia. We honour the wisdom of and pay respect to elders past, present and future. Now, during the session, feel free to ask questions throughout the event. There's a box on the bottom left-hand corner, and we do value your feedback and input into future sessions. So we'll please take a quick moment to answer the survey questions as they come through on your screen. But first of all, I'd like to hand over to Sam Lobley, who's going to run the session today.
Thank you, Janelle, and welcome. My name is Sam Lobley. I'm an insurance partner here at PwC, and I lead our CFO advisory practice. So as Janelle mentioned, this is the second in a series of webinar events, which we're working with G100 on to focus on the future of the profession. And as the video you've just seen highlighted, finance transformation has never been more important. There's disruption more than ever in everywhere we look, both at home and at work. And finance functions really need to lead from the front, to be more agile, to be rapid in their response, and to take a leadership role across the whole organisation in this hugely important area. So for those of you that were with us in our first event back in November, which seems like a lifetime ago, we focused a lot on digitisation. It was a topic that was very relevant to us all at the time, given the way that we were changing the way that we live and work. And that session focused on some of the challenges around digitisation, but also the real benefits that come from really embedding much stronger levels of agility, employee engagement and productivity. So today we're going to change tack slightly and focus a bit more broadly on finance transformation as a whole. We're really going to spend time digging into the practical insights and recommendations and learnings that we can share with you to make your role more effective, and also to give you some new ideas about how you might tackle your finance transformation journey in your organisation. So we're lucky today to be joined not only by Janelle, but to be joined by Matt Young, the CFO at Treasury Wine Estates, and Sushma Segal, the Group Finance COO at QBE, and also our very own Mathea Beck from PwC. Welcome. So Matt, Sushma and Mathea will share their perspectives that they've learned from real-life finance transformations, both within their own company and from Mathea, also learned from over 25 years of working with many companies through different types of transformation agendas. I'm sure over that time she's seen both, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So as Janelle mentioned, there'll be plenty of time for Q&A. So please start to think about questions that you'd like to put to the panelists. There's a free text box on the screen that you should be able to type into. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, who is Matt Young. So Matt joined Treasury Wine Estates in 2014 and was appointed to the Group CFO role in 2018. So Matt's role covers both group finance and also IT and shared business services, and supports an organisation that sells product into over 60 countries, has manufacturing operations all over the world, and manages the brands of some of our most iconic wine products, both Penfolds and Wolf Bass here in Australia, and Beringer and BV in Napa. Outside of work, Matt likes to spend his time with his 3 young daughters. When he can get away from the house, go cycling, and also follow his beloved Essendon, who have their first game at the weekend, and I understand Matt will be there. Over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Sam. And look, it's a real pleasure to be here. As I say, I'm a bit distracted. Football is back here in Melbourne, so I'll be ready for that. But this is a topic I'm very passionate about. It's something since I joined Treasury I've been really focused on. As one of the reasons I joined Treasury and why I've been quite passionate in my journey to focus on this. I'm not going to present to you a journey that's complete. Talk good, bad and ugly. There's a little bit of that throughout our journey, but I'll give you a bit of an insight of what we've tackled, how we've tackled it, and what we're still working on, just to give you a bit of an insight. So I might just move to the slide that gives you a bit of a sense really quickly around who Treasury Wine is. Look, at a top level, we're a wine company. We are vertically integrated across viticulture, winemaking, production, sales and marketing. We sell around 32 million cases a year across probably sales across 100 countries. We have about 80 different brands, and you can see some of the brands. Quick plug on the page there if anyone needs to go via Dan Murphy's tonight. At a winemaking level, we source and make wines across Australia, the US, Italy, France, and New Zealand. So a degree of complexity there. And from a finance perspective, we previously had a team of around about 200 people spread across around about 11 locations. Today, we're a bit tighter. We're around about 110 across 7 locations, and that's been part of the journey that we've gone on. And for those with a keen eye, you will see I'm still calling out that we've got a team in China. We still plan to have a team in China. So if that comes up on the Q&A. We might move to the next slide. When we started this journey, we had a clear burning platform within the organisation. Essentially, as a finance team, we'd realised that if we were going to hit our ambition, particularly our financial ambition, we just could not continue to operate the way we were. We had 5 or 6 different ways of doing things around the business, and just it was too complex the way we were working, and we had big, bold growth ambitions as a company. It essentially worked, but it really worked off the back of hard work and the individuals that we had in the organisation, and that wasn't sustainable. You can see there the ambition on our page. Now, that's a relatively recent ambition and game plan that we've put in place, but it's probably tweaked from what existed about 5 years ago. It's the game plan in our language is what we want to be famous for. The thing we did at the start of the journey, whether it was this or otherwise, we sought out feedback from our customers, essentially sales, marketing, supply part of our business. Just try to understand what we were good at, what we were not good at, and to learn what was really needed from the finance organisation to achieve this ambition or this game plan. And you can see there on the right some of the key things that we didn't have in place and we needed to work on. We needed to be more customer-centric. We were a bit more internally focused of what we were producing. We need to think about the customer, think about the consumer and how we were adding value there. We needed to provide deeper commercial insight, and what we mean by that is not just reporting and helping people understand the numbers, but what to do about it and what decisions to make. We needed to be more scalable and efficient. As I said, lots of different ways of doing things around the business. And we really needed to improve our information and data. That was one thing that has been holding us back as an organisation. And finally, we needed a culture of people that were focused on adding value in their role. We did have a lot of the organisation that was, transactional. We needed to think about everyone adding value in their role, whatever that was, to the business. So we started on a journey, as I say, about 4 years ago, and I'll take you through a little bit of what that looked like if we can just move to the next slide. So we started with a vision. Like any good journey, you need to know where you're going. We had a vision of how we would transform this organisation, and that vision was around, working clever. So essentially, taking work out of the finance organisation and doing more with less. And also driving value, reorienting our capability away from the transactional to the value that we can create. This started out as add value, but the mindset that we really wanted was around driving value, a step change shift in how people tackled the creation of value for the company. We then went, and it's a very detailed part on the right-hand slide, but we went through a very detailed stock take of activities, and we went through everything in the organisation, what we did, and we mapped it against, I guess, the perspective of, what was strategically important to the organisation and what had the ability to be centralised. And what you can see are essentially 4 quadrants of activity that we mapped in our organisation. I'll call out the bottom left hand what we called powerhouse at the time. Those were essentially the areas less strategically important to us, but capable of being centralised and outsourced. And so and I'll also call out, you'll see those black areas, some of those words, those were things that we weren't doing today and capability that we needed to create within the organisation. So after that stock take, we had a range of initiatives that we tackled over time. And so we essentially set up a program of work, a project to tackle. And if we move to the next slide, we started with process. We initiated a program right at the start called Project Foundations, which was really around documenting what we did, particularly those parts in what we would call the powerhouse, the transactional. It was around documenting what we did so that we could standardise and understand particularly the controls, but the inefficiency. And documenting that was a really important step change. I'll touch on technology now. One thing that we did at the start of the journey was move to a single ERP. That was a really important part for us to move down the standardisation journey. Since then, we've also invested fairly heavily in planning systems, trade promotion systems, forecasting systems to get a single instance and ways to improve that consistency that we have and efficiency of analysis throughout the organisation. We continue to look at new ways and new parts of technology to help in this, whether that be things like Blackline, Treasury systems, pricing optimisation, but there's a journey, a roadmap that we're on to use technology to progress us. In terms of people and, I guess, model at the top, I'll start with model, and this has been the slowest part that we've worked through, but for a good reason. We started essentially what was on a finance journey. Of areas that we could centralise, potentially outsource, or at least right source the way we were going to tackle of them. And what we quickly learned was that the wider Treasury organisation could benefit from a similar approach. Supply, customer service. So we essentially waited for that to happen and then did it as an entire organisation. So it delayed it, but it was important that we did that as part of the organisation. And if I turn to people, we realised we may not have the skills in our organisation for the future state. So what we've done is essentially a capability mapping, different levels across different functions within finance, what skills do we need for the future, and then mapping our individuals to that so that we know what talent we need to bring in, what talent we need to uplift in the organisation. And as we are, I guess, if there is turnover in the team, we can tackle those and bring the right talent in, albeit we have to be careful on timing. And then data. This is probably the piece that is critical to all of it, but we haven't, it's been a slower part of our progress. We've made some improvements along the journey, but certainly what we still have as an organisation is better data, but it's spread everywhere. So we have essentially in the last couple of months kicked off a large data and analytics project where we will consolidate, improve the modelling and the governance right across all data, whether that be finance, customer, consumer, supply. So it's quite a big project, but that's a really important leap forward for the organisation. And if we move to the next slide, I'll touch a little bit on what we learnt. Firstly, it'll take longer than you think. Clearly, I've said 4 years. We probably thought it would be 3 to 4 years, and I'd say we've got another year or two to go. Some of that's for good reasons, but to that extent, having really strong CEO buy-in to your journey is important because you need to understand what the end goal and understand when it deviates from that plan that you've got the support to make that happen. Secondly, we needed our own leadership team to stay the course because of that timeline, and some of the implementation was significant, whether that be moving to an outsourced partner that we have and some of the system and technologies. We needed my team and leadership to really be on the journey and really committed to it. Thirdly, you need to lead this across the organisation. Your internal customers and suppliers are really, really important. It can't just be a focus on finance. As I said, we should have focused more on the organisation and probably gotten through this faster because the organisation wanted to go on the same journey. But clearly the importance of your technology partner, and that's where we also probably had struggles along the journey, was getting the real buy-in and commitment from the IT organisation to this journey. We were on a path leading it ourselves. We didn't take our technology partners along the journey with us, and that caused angst on both sides. It's something that we fixed now, but it's an important learning for us. And then the last one's around, I guess, a people-centric change. For us, we had to put people at the heart of it in terms of their training, their development, and bringing them on the journey, telling them more, oversharing the transparency. When we moved to an outsourced model, we were extremely transparent around what that meant and gave a lot of notice. That has been really important, partially because we've gone off path on the journey sometimes, but maintaining the commitment from our teams has been a really important part of it. So those are the key messages I wanted to share. So thanks I'm sure there'll be a few questions on that, but I'll hand back to Sam.
Thank you, Matt. And I thought that was really insightful. I mean, for me, what was really useful was, these things take time. There's no right or wrong answer, but, it's very helpful having a sense of what the end game is, having the vision in place so that you can have that beacon on the hill, so that when you go off path slightly, you can get some alignment around what it is that the team is focused on. And also getting the balance between, people, process and performance, and so you can drop incremental value along the way. So it's not just a big bang. So thank you for that. Very, very helpful, very insightful. So next I'd like to change tack slightly and hand over to Sushma Segal, who's the Group Finance COO at QBE. So Sushma's responsibilities sound really good. It's a role that I think I might apply for next. It includes working with finance globally, working alongside the finance leadership team to develop the finance strategy and their key priorities, and to oversee the effective delivery of the modernisation of the change roadmap, as well as managing the modernisation and improvement of finance systems. So sounds like a really fascinating role. Outside of work, Sushma is the mother of 2 children, and she said, as someone who's really benefited from excellent mentors and support during her career, it's something that she's really passionate about, to make sure that women in finance can really reach their full potential. Thank you, Sushma. Over to you.
Great, thanks, Sam, and thank you for the opportunity to speak about QBE's finance transformation journey. I'll share around how we've approached it, why it's important, and some of our key learnings today. But firstly, by way of background, if we could turn to the first slide. QBE is a global general insurance and reinsurance business. It's listed on the Australian Stock Exchange. It's headquartered in Sydney. It was founded in 1886 in Townsville in Queensland, and today it employs 12,000 people in 27 countries. We operate as 3 divisions. It's Australia Pacific, International, and North America. Go to the next slide. There are around 1,100 people that work in finance, and our vision for the function is to become a customer-focused global finance team that's influential, impactful, and insightful, and protecting and growing shareholder value. Now, we set this vision up back in 2018. It still resonates for us. We've made some progress in achieving our vision, but we've got more work to do. Our change journey continues. Until 2012, our finance teams were located primarily in Sydney, London, New York, Hong Kong, Singapore. But between 2012 and 2015, we transitioned many of our transactional finance processes to our Group Shared Services Centre, which is located in the Philippines. And today, 400 of our 1,100 team members work from there. And that was a lift and shift transition, and it awaited common technology within our divisions to realise our ambition around simplified, standardised and scaled end-to-end transactional processes. Our journey on the technology front started in 2016, and by 2019 we deployed a fair amount of globally consistent technology. So we've deployed a global consolidation system, a finance close manager, Oracle Fusion General Ledger in our international division, and also Hyperion Planning globally. We've also implemented black-line reconciliation technology to support our balance sheet reconciliation processes. And I should just mention, just pause in terms of our international division. We feel what we've deployed there is something a little unique and special, in that we've spent a good amount of time integrating data and conforming that data. So what we've created is a solution. It's not just a general ledger deployment, it's a solution that creates an automated data journey from our source systems, which is our insurance systems, all the way through to our general ledger. And the data is available at grain, and that's eliminated about 90% of our manual adjustments that were being handled by the finance teams for their financial reporting and regulatory reporting purposes. So what we've deployed, and that actually forms the blueprint for our deployment in the other two divisions in the future. But what we've deployed essentially is modern technology for our FP&A and financial control teams. And we've seen the benefits of that. It's enabled a step change in financial close efficiency, control and quality. And it made possible for us to bring forward our release of the group results to the market by 7 days in 2019. And through 2020, we saw further benefits of our finance transformation. As we know, the World Health Organization declared the COVID-19 outbreak as a global pandemic on the 12th of March 2020. On the 14th of April 2020, that was merely a month later, we were able to go to the market and raise $1.2 billion of capital. And that was to strengthen the balance sheet and to take preventative actions against the possible impacts of the pandemic. We were one of the first companies worldwide to have done that. And as we know, a number of other companies took similar actions through the course of 2020. Now, our ability to move this quickly was due to global ways of working that we'd established quite rapidly. Pandemic sort of accelerated the way we worked and came together as a global team around a set of topics that were led by our group CFO and the finance leadership team. However, it would not have been possible without the investment through the finance transformation journey, because that enabled us to rapidly deploy 1,100 people into working from home arrangements, complete our Q1 March, which is in March 2020, close efficiently, and also to consider the impact of different scenarios playing out as a result of the pandemic. And this was all required in support of the capital raising. So the pandemic highlighted, I guess, for us, the importance of the technology foundations that we built, but it really sharpened our focus around our vision. And while finance has been highly regarded in its support to the business through the pandemic, the actions that we've taken through the pandemic, it's also become very clear to us where we need to focus next. It's really reinforced the remaining aspects of our journey. And what we need to become is a team that proactively supports the business, not just in a crisis, but in the way that we work with the business all the time. And what we need to do is support the business through providing actionable insights around performance, using more forward-looking metrics, and really instilling a plan ahead culture across all aspects of our finance function. And I guess creating the capacity to do more ad hoc and less routine tasks. Again, real focus on business partnering, but not just for the finance business partnering team, but for all aspects of the finance function. And in order to achieve this, we need to continue our journey in terms of simplifying and optimizing our finance processes to create the capacity to do more value-adding work with the business. And we also need to invest and continue our investment in our skills for the future, in particular around data. So converting data into information, into insight is crucial, and also our commercial and strategic capability. We need to continue to invest in that with our finance teams. So these are the areas that we're focused on today. We'd go to the next slide. So while a lot's been achieved in a relatively short period of time, finance transformations are certainly not easy journeys, and there are numerous factors that can derail a transformation. However, in our experience over the years, what we've found is that setting this up in a certain way helps to overcome these obstacles that will surely come along. And we've highlighted here sort of 5 of our key learnings. So one has been around demonstrating the organisational value beyond finance and talking often about the why. And this has been quite important for us. The why has been around the data aspects, enabling that for better MI. It has been around efficiency, and it has been about resiliency. The narrative around that has been important, in particular as we came across different challenges, obstacles, and as we thought about, how we were going to, I guess, access more resources to continue on our journey. And what's also been important has been delivering benefits along the way. And finance transformation competes for funding against all the other priorities of the organisation, I should say. And so it's been very important to ensure that our narrative has been consistent and well supported across the organisation. Key to that is the second point. So the alignment around the global finance leadership team, alignment around the vision, the strategy, the roadmap to achieve what we desire to achieve as a function has been crucial. And engaging influential leaders to steer and committing local sponsors has been absolutely crucial. Again, very important as we sort of come across different obstacles, that we've got the right people to help us see through those obstacles. Often they relate to being able to access the right resources at the right time. The third one's been around change leadership, and this can't be underestimated. It's so crucial. Operating model changes are so tough to deliver, and so a real focus on change leadership has been important for us. The fourth one I'm really passionate about. It's enabling our internal talent to lead the transformation where possible. It's proven to be obviously very, in terms of career development, great opportunities for our internal team members, but also they're the people that know the organisation and really have the desire for the change. And it's amazing when you get the right team on the transformation, what a difference it can make. And the final piece is around testing your current state assumptions, especially for data. To understand the data gaps that exist that we were looking to solve for was so critical in understanding the time and investment required to achieve our goals. So we've learned a lot along the way. We've course corrected. Finance transformations are hard, and as was highlighted in the opening video, not for the faint-hearted. It does require a lot of resilience, a lot of consistency and commitment from many in the organisation. However, the benefits for us have been demonstrated, and the pandemic has really elevated the role of finance within QBE, and we continue on the journey. So thank you, and back to Sam.
Thank you, Sushma. And that was a really, really interesting set of perspectives. For me, I was really fascinated by the comments about being clear with the why, because getting that narrative right is really important, and it helps bring the whole organisation along for the journey. And then the other one that really jumped out at me and resonated from a PwC perspective was giving younger talent the opportunity to take a leadership role. Often, as we all know, often it's the more experienced, often older executives that tend to take a leadership role in some projects, and you don't always get the right answer. But we found that even at PwC, when we're trying to change things up, and it sounds like was similar at QBE, that by giving the opportunity to younger, talented team members, you can really change the status quo and get a much more impactful outcome. So third, but certainly not last, we've got Mathea Beck, who is our corporate functions transformation leader at PwC. Just hold your horses. Mathea's got over 25 years experience working across basically everywhere in the world. It says here US, UK, Europe, and Australia, so I'm not sure where else is left. So Mathea has seen firsthand the experiences of what a good transformation looks like, and also potentially some of the learnings from other less impactful projects. And outside work, I understand that when you like to travel a lot. It says here that you've been doing some virtual safaris during lockdown, so I'd like to hear a bit more about those later if we can. But anyway, over to you.
Excellent, thanks Sam, and good to speak to everybody today. So as Sam mentioned, I've spent the last 25 years or so being involved in finance transformation, from the planning through to the implementation. And I think one of my reflections on that is that the journey actually never ends. And that's partly because it's been driven by the technology advancements that we've seen over the years. So I can remember the heady days of the excitement of moving off the AS400 and starting to use ERP systems and the insight that you would get from those. Fast forward to today, and what we're seeing now is a huge amount of data that we can't actually analyze now without the help of machines. So it's actually a really exciting time to be completing a finance transformation or starting through that transformation journey. However, throughout it all, there has been probably two key points of pressure on the CFO. The first has been the ongoing need to constantly reduce the cost of finance. And I think we're seeing this through everybody's transformation journeys with a focus on productivity, how to do more with less. The second area has been around improving the effectiveness of the finance function. So bringing the insights and the information that's needed to drive the decision making through the journey. And we've heard that in both the presentations today. So the finance transformation journey today uses a combination of some of the traditional levers that the team have talked about around outsourcing, the process standardization, delayering, offshoring. These are now combined with some of the more modern levers that we're seeing, and they include some of the small automation through robotic process automation, visualization through dashboards, as well as the upskilling and implementation of point cloud solutions such as Blackline that we've heard today as well. And this enables a transformational change ahead of any other larger or next generation transformation. For example, upgrading your ERP into the cloud, or potentially even starting to move to an agile transformation across the organization. So if we go to the next slide, what I'd like to do is just share with you the PwC framework around the future of finance. We've heard today that people can actually have started anywhere and excuse me, that people have started in different places along that journey. And that's really the key point of this slide. You can actually start anywhere in the journey, but we then see there being 7 key imperatives through that journey across 3 dimensions. And I call those the 3 Ps. So at the top, it's very much around people. And we've heard about the people agenda today. The middle layer is about process, and the bottom layer is around performance. So if I start on the top layer, in terms of the process, in terms of the people, what we're seeing here is the finance organization and structure and the changes that are taking place to that. Today, the finance team combines the digital workforce with the actual people workforce. So we're seeing a combination of digital COEs along with the more traditional centres of excellence for tax, treasury, but also financial planning and analysis. We also continue to use shared services or outsourcing, but start to talk to a concept now of no-shoring, so how we can potentially bring back processes onshore and have them completely automated so they're zero touch. And then finally, of course, the business partners, which are heavily embedded into the organisation and delivering that insight and value. To the right of that, we're seeing a real drive around the finance workforce and capabilities. So the finance workforce today needs to be much more digitally fit. They need to have a culture of curiosity and continuous improvement to drive the change within the organisation. And some of the emerging skills that are really important are around storytelling, influencing the stakeholders, and also the change and leadership skills, all of which are underpinned by the new digital capabilities. So we're seeing an emergence of some of the new roles, for example, the regulatory architect, the finance digital workforce lead. The middle layer is very much focused around process. So to the left, we have process excellence and automation. Interestingly, we're seeing a resurgence of the global process owners. Typically, these were established when you're starting out on your ERP journey, but now we're seeing them being stood up to actually drive end-to-end process improvement and using tools such as business process management capabilities. So these are really helping drive that operational improvements and efficiencies that the CFOs are expecting. In the middle, we have the cloud ERP and digital platforms, and core to this is the data that sits within that. So moving to a cloud ERP has to be undertaken with a review and readiness assessment, and also cleansing of the data, because the cloud ERP and the surrounding digital platforms are actually rely on good quality data underneath it. So it was interesting to hear the team's experience in this area as well. And digital platforms are now being delivered to finance to enable process automation, the business process management, and also starting to support the self-delivery. So through ServiceNow, for example, being able to, for the customers of finance to answer questions themselves through the digital tools. And then to the right-hand side, we have the automated and predictive controls. So very much embedding the controls into the processes as part of your ERP journey is key. And then starting to use AI and machine learning to move from the more, to move towards predictive and controls. And then on the bottom layer, we have, of course, the performance, which is really key going forwards. And this is where finance is expected to deliver the value. We use advanced analytics, insights, and action. So companies such as Microsoft and Volkswagen have started to move towards predictive forecasting using machine learning to really drive the rapid delivery of the insights and the forecast for the business. And that obviously relies on the connected data that I talked about above. And then to the right-hand side of that, we have the strategic business partners. So business partners need to have a new set of capabilities and use the data on a real time to provide the insights. And it needs to be data-driven and actionable in order to drive the business performance. So if I just go to the next slide, what that means is we've effectively pivoted the finance function from the very old traditional with the shared services at the bottom, where we had a large number of people, potentially lower cost, through the controls and controls layer up to the insight and actions. And what we're seeing today through the delivery across the key levers that I've talked about, the 3 Ps, we're seeing a move much more to a smaller and obviously less costly shared services and outsourcing at the bottom. Compliance and controls still very important going forwards, but that insights and actions is delivering much more strategic value to the organization. And that's where we're seeing the importance and the pivot of the finance team to the strategic insights. And that's where also the actionable advice is being delivered from. So if you focus on those key levers, you can actually start to drive a much more efficient and effective function. And I think please feel free to use the previous checklist to see where you are on that journey, not to worry about where you start, but to gradually tick off each one of those to really enable you to deliver a much more effective function in the future.
Thank you. Very, very helpful. I think it was pleasing for me that there's never a wrong or right time to start, and there's always something that you can meaningfully get on with that will deliver some value on the way. So, so with that that in mind, we might go to a poll. We'll have to see if the tech can work, but hopefully somewhere on your screen you can see a question, which is something along the lines of, for your organization, what's the primary driver of the need for finance function transformation? And hopefully you can choose between performance, process efficiency, digitization, employee value proposition, or other. And we might give everyone about 30 seconds to populate that. And while we're doing that, just sort of think through, for me, we're probably going to see that there's no right answer, right? But it is important to get the messaging correct. And I think that was something that came out from all of the presentations. And I don't know, Janelle, from what you're seeing across all of the G100, whether there's any other themes that have sort of resonated with you from the conversation so far.
I think It all resonates. Like, the reality is that transformation journey never ends, and there's always something new coming over the horizon that we can apply to make us better. And so I think it's never going to be a job done. And I think that, that change is constant conversation you absolutely need to keep having with your teams, and you want them to be, the best thing you can have is getting your team into the mindset that constant change and evolution is a good thing, because that's what that curious, I think Mathea said, that curious mindset is so important in finance functions these days. So, I'm always excited about the next thing coming over the horizon. What is it going to be? How's it going to help my business? How's it going to help us be more successful? And to one of the questions, points around employee value proposition, how's it going to help my team be, really engaged and wanting to be part of my finance function? Because there's that war for talent is out there, and we absolutely need to, make your finance function as great as it can be to keep people.
Exactly. I think the other word, I think it was Sushma that mentioned it, is that resilience, because nobody could have predicted the events of the last 12 to 18 months, but you probably could have predicted that something would happen, and it's that ability to be resilient. So, and talking of resilience, we don't seem to have any graphics for the poll, so we might need to just take that on notice and move on to the questions. So we'll start with the first question. So hopefully you've all been able to put some questions into the Q&A box. I do understand there's been quite a few coming through. We might start with one that's come through, which we might direct to Sushma first, if that's okay. So the question, there's been a few of these, so I'll try and paraphrase it, but it's basically that finance functions have got access to larger and larger amounts of data, both structured and unstructured. And so how, from your perspective, how important is it to addressing the, what to do with that data, and how to make sure that the finance team just isn't joining bits of data together and actually doing something useful with it?
Yeah, look, data is such a big component of this, isn't it? So, in terms of the business, there's a real demand for better insights into their performance, and certainly here at QBE, we've been on a bit of a journey around data and the desire for data from the business. So, it is about understanding, from our perspective, understanding actually, where, what is the insights that we need to draw from the data and how we can get to it. And it is about building the skills to get to that data and transform that into insight. But it's not straightforward. It's certainly it's a journey that we continue to be on. But I think the other piece is for us to know that data doesn't need to be perfect, right? To draw the insights, something can be 80-20 to be able to provide the insights, back from that data. As finance team members, we tend to like to get things perfect before we sort of transform that into insight. But I think we need to become more used to working with data sets that are not perfect.
Cool, thank you. And while Sushma's been talking, we did get the results of the poll, so I can confirm that over half of you said that process efficiency and simplification was the key driver, followed by performance. And so I think it's an interesting one. Matt, I might hand it to you, given I know from your experience, process efficiency and cost was part of the reason at the beginning, but interesting your thoughts around whether that really held true.
Yeah, I think it did. I think I probably started on a more pure journey around performance, and then my CEO decided it was about cost. So we came to an agreed proposal. But I think we've delivered the cost side of it. I think we have lived up to that, bumped up against it in certain areas. We're a pretty change-hungry organisation, so in some areas we probably went a bit, or cut a bit deeper, or changed a bit deeper. But we're able to flex back here and there. So the cost side of it was easier. The efficiency in terms of how we've standardised and improved, I think I'm pretty proud of how far we've come. Particularly, we've moved to the sort of an outsourced model, almost a somewhat co-sourced model with Accenture, and the process that they've put in place to standardise, starting to implement automation that we couldn't do. They're doing that faster than we could have done, and the learnings that we're taking back into the organisation, and now the consistency of reporting timelines and reports and processes is there. You have to sometimes remind the organisation how bad we were in the past, to remind them that actually this is really good. But yeah, both of those things are there. I think it's the performance piece that for us is we still haven't freed the organisation up enough from the process of managing data to be able to free their time up to spend all the time on the insights. And so that to me is still the piece we're trying to do through this new project.
Yeah, no, thank you. And just maybe following on from that, you talk quite a lot about sort of evolution, not revolution, and sort of getting the timing right. Just is there anything you can share around how to manage the people aspect and the personal aspect of staff changes and sort of how to make sure you're treating people with utmost respect and going through some pretty tricky conversations?
If I go all the way back to the burning platform that we had, it wasn't a hard sell to the organisation of where we wanted to get to, but clearly a lot of scepticism of how we would get there and when we would get there. And from day one and throughout the message, it's been around the destination, the beacon on the hill, as you described it, and keeping them aware of what's progressing, being transparent on what's not working, why it's not working, and what you're doing to fix it. That's been a really important part in keeping the motivation. And so we haven't seen people grow any more sceptical of whether we'll get there, but they're just hungry to do it. If I think about the biggest change we made to essentially move to that outsourced model, I think took a very transparent, which was we gave something like a 6 to 7 month lead time of messaging to say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to treat you with respect. We're going to give you plenty of time, all the resources you need if your role is impacted. But it was a bit risky because we were concerned about a flight. We were concerned around disengagement, but no, we didn't see it. And I think the team that ran that did a great job, but the messaging that they put around it, which was different for us as an organisation around that transparency and respectfulness of it, was really important part to it. We've just announced another organisational change, moving from sort of regions to branded-based structure, and we've followed the same model, giving a lot of time for people to get their head around it.
Yeah. No, thank you. So the next question, we'll change tack slightly, so I'll put it to both Sushma and Matt, but Sushma first, because both of you mentioned sort of the practical, economics of having to get these investments signed off internally. So the group was keen for any perspectives you have around, how best to get sign off on the appropriate business case, making sure you're not going for too much, but also, not accepting it when it's not sufficient. And then also, what are the most important KPIs to use to measure the effectiveness of the transformation project? So maybe Sushma first, and then get any additional perspectives from Matt.
Yeah, hi, great question. Certainly, finance transformations compete against funding, against all the different investments that the organisation needs to make, and there's a finite number of resources. And in terms of the business case, we spent a lot of time, road testing what we wanted to achieve, from group board to executive to the people on the ground in terms of, what it is that we could achieve through the finance transformation and how we could go about doing it. And key to that was actually defining, what those measures of success looked like. So we could, it's a long journey. And so we needed to demonstrate that we were on track or where we were off track and be fully transparent around that. So we went to, measures as tactical as how many spreadsheets we use in the organisation and where we will get to at the end of the transformation, how many manual adjustments that we're putting through, and how that will change as a result of the transformation, and over time, where we expect our team to be putting their efforts towards. So that's the kind of how we've approached it, and we sort of have regular updates with each of these key stakeholders to talk about our journey, obstacles that come along the way, and being totally transparent with them on where we're at and our next steps, and taking guidance from them so they feel like they're part of the journey that we're on.
Yeah, and I think for us as an organisation, where the finance transformation involved big IT projects and big organisational change. We were able to get those business cases up without a business case. They were essentially qualitative business cases, a $15 million ERP investment, $20 million planning systems with no financial payback. And that takes a lot more effort on the qualitative side of, this is brass tacks, we've got to get this right, and selling the vision of what this can do across the board, across executive leadership and across the organisation. So that was very difficult to do, which partially drove the timeline. But what we were very conscious of is committing to financial outcomes of this could drive the wrong outcome, and that actually we just knew that this had to be done. On the finance transformation, I think when I think about this sort of outsource, that was a clearer financial element to it. So there was more. It was a lot clearer to do, but we were very focused on to the point of measuring success on, what are all the key metrics? What are you going to see? So we need to be able to show to the organisation, we close on workday 4. Our ambition is workday 2. We think we can get to workday 3 by this period. That each of those markers and show the success, because as I said before, people forget what you were doing before. And you've got to share them on the journey, why the change is important and the progress you're making, so that they buy into it.
Yeah, thank you. So another question has come through, which is aimed at Mathea. So keen for your thoughts on this one. So there's a huge amount of talk around finance business partnering and sort of delivering value, whatever that is, to the organisation. Where have you seen this done really well? You don't need to name the organisation, but sort of how was it done well? How was real insight and value delivered? And what might be the key formula for success in setting up a really fit for purpose finance business partnering team?
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I probably won't name the organisation, but the one that I go back to most frequently is, not surprisingly, a technology company, where they have gone through a finance transformation journey, put in place the foundational elements around the ERP, but also the data that is needed to be able to support that. So they really started to think about what are the questions that they're trying to answer through the data, and developed a common set of metrics across the organisation at a corporate level, then starting to look at the segment level, at divisional level, and then into the actual countries themselves and by product line. So having that sort of clear definition of the, let me call it the KPIs and the metrics that matter is really important. And then starting to think about how do you deliver those. And we always talk about self-service and in finance, but there are just some stakeholders that you cannot move to that self-service model. So it's thinking about your key stakeholders, how they want the information delivered, and being able to have a practical approach around that. Predominantly it is self-service, but there are times when you actually need to push the reports out to certain stakeholders. But you do that through understanding their requirements. And then putting in place a whole rhythm of the business around how that reporting, the governance around that works, how the meetings run through, and how the information is being used. So you can start to be much more interactive through the visualization in the meetings, in the quarterly business reviews or the month-end reviews, and use the drill down through the dashboards. And that's where companies are starting to head towards. But I think many are still in that sort of that paper PowerPoint view of the world.
Yeah.
But it is amazing. I think today is the first time I read the other day that we've got 5 generations in the workplace. So some of the customer feedback that I've done is, you need to go and talk to the graduate that's just started, because they're great at using Power BI. And we can really tap into some of those skills and ideas as to how to present the data differently. So that's been really quite interesting, seeing how the capability is developed as well. And that will be important going forwards, in addition to all of the softer skills that I talked about around the storytelling and such like.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I've just realised that clock's slightly slow, so we are kind of running up against time. So we're unfortunately not going to get time for all the questions. We will collate them and work out a good way of sharing them. So one hopefully straightforward question, Janelle. So in terms of the technologies that you see and you use across your organisations, are there any that you think really jump out at being, if not best practice, at least really good for companies looking to improve the automation of financial control and sort of? those tactical solutions?
I think everybody's got what their favourite system. It's like, are you a team or a Zoom, company? But for us, we put in Blackline. I think everybody's mentioned Blackline. I think it's a good core control system to use. We're using Tableau as our BI, effectively dashboard tool. We think that's a good one. I don't think there's one right answer. Yeah. I think it's actually what is your business requirements actually look like, and what's going to be right for you. Don't get sold by the shiny, most expensive toy, because it's not necessarily the right one. You could actually do, you don't need the Ferrari, you might just need the Commodore. Yeah, not the Commodore anymore.
That makes sense.
And then one quick one to close is hopefully a one-word answer. We've all talked about managing stakeholders. So in your organisation, who are the worst group of stakeholders that need to be the hardest stakeholders to manage? Anyone can go first.
The hardest to engage was our technology partners in IT, but the most complex is finance.
Right.
Keeping them on the journey and keeping them believe in the story.
Our hardest ones would be our product leaders, because they believe you need to invest in the front office, not the back office. So convincing them's hard.
Sushma?
I'd say our technology and data teams always got a lot of demand on the technology and data teams, but also very key to achieving what we needed to achieve. So.
Thank you. And I think I can probably talk confidently for Mathea and I that it's the partners at PwC that we find the hardest.
Or engineers, they want everything.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
So we are running pretty close to 1 o'clock, and we promised we'd get everyone out in the hour. So I'll just make a few sort of closing points. So first, I wanted to thank Sushma, Matt, and Mathea for their time today. Really appreciate you being so candid and helpful with your time. So I know it's taken a lot of prep to get this session done. So thank you, and thank you to Janelle for helping open. I think we've heard today, there is no right or wrong answer in how companies can go about a transformation, and there's also no wrong place to start, as long as when you do start, you've got an understanding of what it involves and what the big picture might look like. So I suppose for me, it's having that clear understanding of the vision and where you're aiming to get to, and being really clear with your whole organisation around why you're asking for precious funds to be spent in something which sometimes can be seen as back office. But most importantly, it's really engaging with your people and giving talented finance professionals the opportunity to really make an impactful impression on the team, and to do things that are a bit different, and just to take them outside their comfort zone. So if there's one thing hopefully you'll take away, it's have a go, and as long as you're doing it with the right intent, your activities should be well received. And lastly, I always forget, thank you all for attending. We can't see you, but we know you're there, and we know you're providing questions. So thank you all. And thank you to the G100 working group. And thank you to G100. So what's next? So we have a session lined up in May, dates to be confirmed ever so soon. And that will be around the emerging skills gap that we're all facing into at the moment, and the war for talent. So I'm looking forward to that session. And I think the last one will be to ask you for feedback, and also to let you know that if your teams couldn't make the session today, there will be a recording available both on the G100 website and the PwC website, so you'll be able to access it at your leisure. And with that, bang on 1 o'clock, we will say thank you and goodbye.
I could almost go